Good evening, and welcome to the third edition of the Every Nation Update. We're pushing Seinfeld now, I think. We're getting in that category of how many episodes. But we're glad you're here tonight, and what we get to do on the Every Nation Update is we get to travel. And we get to visit countries and cultures that maybe we don't get to go to physically so often. And I'll tell you what, tonight we're going to go to the continent of Africa. And I am dressed African tonight. I was just in Uganda for 3 weeks and I had this shirt custom tailor-made for me so that I would blend in Uganda, which I think worked quite well.
It's beautiful.
But tonight we're going to visit a neighboring country, the country of Nigeria. It's the largest and most populous country on the continent of Africa. And if you haven't been to Africa yourself, man, you're missing out on something. There is something special about the African continent and the vibrancy and the beauty of the people. Having just come back, I am infected with that culture, and my heart easily falls in love with people in the country and in the continent, and it also easily breaks for some of the pain they go through. So Greg, Kelly, CEO of World Mission, why are we going to Nigeria tonight?
Well, John, you had pointed it out. It's such a strategic location. It is the most populated country. If you were to take Africa and flip it upside down and made it a gun, Nigeria is the trigger. So it's a very strategic place, but it's the number of countries, nations that are inside of the country. That's why we do the Every Nation Update, because we emphasize that Jesus didn't call us to countries. When he gave us the Great Commission, he said, go make disciples of all nations, or ethne. And inside of that one country of Nigeria are over 500 nations, consistent of those 200 million people. Nations like the Igbo, like the Yoruba, and like the Hausa. No, I'm not making those up. Those are nations or people groups inside of
Igbo.
Nigeria. Each one of them, it's interesting, John, because each one is about 30 million in size. But here's the difference. The Yoruba and the Igbo, if you were to put them together, they would be 80% Christian. The Hausa, 0.1% Christian. Friends, when we go and we do missions in countries, we need to pay attention to the harvest. And the harvest in the southern part of Nigeria is largely Christian as where we're from in West Michigan, Oklahoma, the Bible Belt. But you go to the northern part of Nigeria, and there's a very little gospel witness. That's where World Mission fishes. And that's where you're going to hear the stories about tonight. All exclusively the work of World Mission is done in northern Nigeria. That's why we're going there tonight.
We get to have conversations with frontline missionaries, people that we're in relationship with, people you have known for a long time. So this Every Nation Update program isn't just kind of statistics and think travel trips or tourism tips. We're going to go meet and listen to what's going on right now. And we're going to have a conversation now with someone we're just going to know by first name only, Mark. And you've known Mark for quite a while.
Known Mark for a long time.
And he's the guy you want to be in partnership with if you're doing ministry in Nigeria.
Yeah, I think, these guys, John, are representative of multiplying themselves. So it's not just about the individual, but in both of these instances, the brothers will meet tonight. There's dozens and dozens of national leaders that are doing the work of the ministry, and they're leading them.
Let's define a couple of terms just before we hear from Mark, in case people aren't familiar. Tell us a little bit about Boko Haram and the Fulani. Can you just kind of give us a primer so we know what they're talking about?
Yeah, Boko Haram, which you've heard of, I'm sure, in the news, they're a radical Islamic group. Think of ISIS, think of Al-Qaeda, think of Al-Shabaab. Boko Haram is in that sort of category, and it literally means in the Hausa language, which is a main trade language in northern Nigeria, it's translated to Western education is evil or forbidden. And so as a result, they're targeting Christianity especially, but even moderate Muslims. And then when we talk about the Fulani, and when you hear about the Fulani, it's one of the nations in the northern part, an incredibly strategic. They say the Fulani, John, are the original missionaries in Africa, and they brought Islam generations ago. The Fulani are incredibly strategic. They're nomadic. They're moving around. Our conviction is that just as Islam came through a nomadic people group, the gospel will go back through those same channels. And we're going to hear some of those exciting stories tonight.
Well, the kingdom of God is at hand and is moving. And if you can participate in some of these worship experiences where these 80% Christian nations, it would blow your mind, the level of passion and love. And then that also teaches us what do we have to offer to the whole of the continent. Why don't we hear from Mark, and let's roll his conversation.
Well, it's great to have Mark with us, who is one of our partners serving in the wonderful country of Nigeria. Mark, it's great to have you as our guest on the Every Nation Update.
Thank you so much, Greg. It's my pleasure to be here. Yeah.
Well, Mark, we've been working together for probably around 10 years, and just really, it's been fun to see the Lord use you as I've watched you.
It's a great privilege. Thank you.
And you are actually from Nigeria, Mark. That's where we first met. We were in Nigeria together. And Nigeria is such a fascinating country, Mark. Help our audience understand just some of the dynamics, north, south, the variety of people groups. When you give an introduction of what is Nigeria, what would you tell somebody?
Nigeria is a very diverse country. A lot of diversity in terms of the economic status, in terms of the social structure, in terms of the ethnographic or people groups, languages, and so on. Living in Nigeria is almost like living in 100 countries in one space. Yeah, because ethnographically speaking, Nigeria has about 524 known people groups. With their distinct languages, cultural backgrounds, ancestry, and so on and so forth. So it's extremely diverse. The North and the South just feels like two totally different regions. I was born in the North, I grew up in the South, and then in my adult years, I moved back to the North, and I've done ministry on both sides. So many times when I travel to the South, it's almost like crossing into a totally different environment.
Yeah, and let's talk about that a little bit, because when I talk to people about Nigeria, I literally, picture a country and then divide it into kind of thirds. And I tell them, like, literally that southern part is as Christian as the Bible Belt in America. Go down to Georgia, go to, Atlanta, go to Alabama, even where we're at in West Michigan, heavily Christian. That is southern Nigeria. I mean, you have billboards of crusades going on, healing ministry, revival meetings, dynamic of churches. And then you go into the middle part and you start getting introduced to Islam, where the capital Abuja is at. It's about 50-50. But as you said, Mark, when you cross that corridor into the north, it is unbelievably, it's a physically hostile environment, but it's also Islam is absolutely entrenched there. So how is it possible, Mark, that there's such a diversity and intensity from south to north in Nigeria?
Okay, to be able to give you a picture of why that diversity, I'll need to go a little bit into history. The Western missionaries who brought the gospel to Africa in the 19th century, actually beginning from the 18th century, but into the 19th century, concentrated much of their work around the coastal areas. It wasn't until the late 19th century when people like Roland Bingham, the SIM pioneers, decided to push northwards, take the gospel inland. But much of the gospel was concentrated in the south. So we saw a lot of people become Christians in the 19th century and even part of the 20th century. Very few missionaries went northwards. Some did, but it was a very difficult terrain to penetrate for the gospel. And so we have this largely Christianized south and the heavily Islamized north, and the middle belt being like the buffer zone. That's where much of the conflict is, because the Muslims are seeking to push Islam southwards, while a few Christians are making efforts to take the gospel to the north. So there's that constant conflict. Yeah, and
Okay.
then you have a lot of Christians in the South who really haven't been exposed to cross-cultural missions to unreached peoples. And so there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of missions awareness and mobilization.
How is it possible in southern Nigeria that there's not been more awareness of what's going on in their own backyard?
I think that the church, for the most part in the South, have played the ostrich, pretending that Islam doesn't exist, at least not on their doorsteps. And so much of the church leaders have not concentrated in building people with a global vision. So there's a lot of emphasis on the local church, but not on God's global mission. So as a result of that, the average Christian in the church in the South really doesn't know much about unreached peoples, does not know the nature and the agenda of Islam, and is not exposed to the fact that Jesus has actually commanded or commissioned him or her to take the gospel to the North and beyond. So I think awareness is lacking for the most part. And then, of course, I would also like to say that genuine biblical radical discipleship needs to be reintroduced in the church in the South so that we can see more laborers responding to the cry or the needs in the North.
Yeah, amen. And it's vast, Mark. I know you had mentioned the phrase, the agenda of Islam. I think it's really critical that we understand that in the West as we're deploying our resources, because there is an agenda to Islam. Nigeria is probably a microcosm of the representation of what that agenda is, really on more of a global scale. But in a lot of ways, I think we're naive. And when we just throw out there, Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, we say, we just kind of loosely throw it out there. But there is an aggressive agenda that manifests itself in Nigeria. What does that look like?
Well, there is some people may have heard about the Abuja Declaration, which is some 3 decades ago or so. Some, high-level Muslim leaders from different parts of Africa had a conference in Abuja, Nigeria. And they came out with this declaration of how to Islamize the entire African continent, beginning from Nigeria and a couple of other countries around the continent that have been handpicked as strategic points to launch, an Islamization force using politics, using the economy, using social systems, using education, using the media, and so on and so forth. Much of the church seems to be unaware. And for those who may be aware, some are not sure what to do, how to respond. But there is a clear agenda to, just like we talk about we having a great commission, they also have a commission to Islamize and to convert people to Islam. So the church basically needs to be aware of this and then develop appropriate means to respond in a redemptive manner that brings the gospel to the Muslims.
And I've got to imagine, Mark, the discipleship-making efforts that take place in the southern part of Nigeria are radically different than the discipleship-making efforts in a primarily Muslim culture like the North. So when you're engaging someone from, let's just say, a village where the gospel's never been to, and someone's heart gets touched with the love of Jesus and they come to Christ, how you handle that person requires great sensitivity and discernment because literally their life, if they're exposed, is in danger, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. When a lot of Muslims come to faith in Christ, it's almost, literally, it's like signing away your life, because discipleship in the North has to be, discipleship everywhere has to be radical. But in the North, we often remind ourselves that if the average Muslim was willing to die for Allah while they were still in Islam, then what prevents him or her to be willing to lay down their lives for the gospel or for Jesus Christ now that they are in the truth? And so we make this fact very plain. And it just has to be a black and white issue. There's no sitting on the fence. A lot of discipleship being done in many parts of the South is, it's kind of, it doesn't raise radical people who are willing to lay down their all. And so that can't sail in the north. It's all or nothing. And that's what I'm praying will be driven back to the south so that we have young people who are, in quote, radicalized with the love of Jesus and being willing to just go anywhere he sends them. Yeah.
And it's not just really when we say Islam, Christianity, sometimes we can just black and white it, but it really goes way beyond there. There's a lot of dynamics to Islam in Nigeria, namely, Mark, Boko Haram. And as they have come on the scene in the last couple of decades, it has dramatically affected an already difficult mission field, and it's made it that much harder. So help us understand a little bit, Mark, of the impact Boko Haram has had on the work, the incredibly vital work that's necessary to make disciples in the northern part of Nigeria. What hindrances has that created?
Okay, I'll approach this by talking about both the hindrances as well as the open doors, the challenges and the opportunities that Boko Haram has presented. As we are aware, God is a master judoka. God specializes in hijacking the devil's program and using it to advance his own glory. When Boko Haram came on the scene, close to 2 decades now, it was mayhem. It was crazy. Whole villages, entire towns were sacked overnight, people killed, and so on and so forth. We've seen the reports on the news. Most missionaries, I almost want to say 99% of missionaries that I know that were working in those territories in Borno State, Yobe State, Adamawa State, had to be evacuated. They had to be withdrawn by their sending agencies and churches. Few who were not evacuated early enough have had to pay with their lives, killed by Boko Haram at some point. So it seemed like a loss because now this is a territory that was already, like you said, very difficult to reach even before Boko Haram. And now the few laborers who have been there sacrificially engaging the tribes there with the gospel have had to be pulled out. So it seemed like a closed door was further closed. But something began to happen. Among the Muslim communities, many of them also fled. You see, Boko Haram was not only targeting Christians, but it was also targeting nominal Muslims. And so a lot of Muslim communities were targeted and sacked from their homelands. And as a result, many of them have had to flee to the central part of the country, as well as to the south. So now you have droves of people driven away from their ancestral homes down to the south, seeking shelter and seeking refuge, some kind of safety. Now, it has become possible to reach these people when they have been uprooted from their homelands, because now they are living among the Christian South. The beautiful thing is that several mission groups have now developed what we call diaspora mission and seeking to plant diaspora churches among northern migrants who are living in the South, very contextualized in the language. Teams that were reaching them in the north have had to migrate to the south along with them, and they are doing a tremendous work of exposing many of these Muslim people groups to the gospel who are now in the south. So that's one positive side of Boko Haram.
Yeah, no doubt about it, Mark. And I know the two majority Muslim nations or people groups in the north where Boko Haram has had activity is the Hausa and also the Fulani. I'd like to talk a little bit about the Fulani because they are such a strategic. The Hausa are in some neighboring countries, but not nearly to the extent as the Fulani are that are across maybe 9, 10, 11 different West Africa countries. So they're incredibly strategic. And you've shared with me that some of these Fulani that have been displaced from the north, they are also now accessible to the gospel in the south. Talk about the implications of that, Mark, specifically among the Fulani, as they've been almost a 99.9% Muslim group, and now we have access to them. That just seems like so divine.
True. Yeah, the Fulani are very strategic in Africa. Actually, they credit themselves for having spread Islam across West Africa. So they are found in about 11 countries in West Africa, spreading across into Central Africa, countries like Chad, even all the way to Sudan. So reaching the Fulani, because of their migratory lifestyle, many of them are nomadic. They are cattle herders. So they move around, which is one of the ways that they were used to spread Islam across that part of the continent. And so reaching the Fulanis is a way of ensuring that the gospel gets carried around as well. For example, you reach a Fulani in the south of Nigeria, that person can easily be equipped, and it's happening actually among some few mission groups, reaching them in the south, equipping them and sending them back to the north to reach their own people in settings that they understand. They have the language, they have the culture, they have access to their Fulani communities. And so the Fulanis are highly strategic. And it's one of the groups that we are privileged to see God doing something new in recent times.
Beautiful. Well, we've learned, Mark, that in Nigeria, there's such a diversity of people groups, hundreds is what was shared earlier. And among those are many languages, hundreds of different languages. And of course, Nigeria is like much of Africa in that there's mainly oral cultures, so they share audio, they share verbally, and they respond to non-literate forms of the gospel, which is where the treasure has really been used. And I know you've seen the treasure be distributed in a number of languages. Maybe share a little bit with us, Mark, about how God's using the treasure in Nigeria to convey the gospel.
Oh, absolutely. This team I mentioned earlier that is reaching and planting diaspora churches among northern migrants in the south, the treasure has been one of the tools that God has used through them to expose many, many Fulanis to the gospel. Several have come to faith in Christ already. Not only the Fulanis, even the Kanuris are being reached. The Hausa people are being reached. Several other tribes in the north. The Fulanis generally, because they live out in the wild, in the bushes, where they migrate around with their cattle, being nomadic, searching for pasture land. They listen to the radio a lot. So the average Fulani cattle, herdsman has this small transistor radio tuned to BBC Hausa service or other radio stations where the Fulfulde language is spoken. So they have been an oral people right from history. So when these tools began to be placed in the hands of Fulanis in their camps, in Nigeria, we call them Ruga. Ruga is like a settlement, a Fulani settlement, where they live for a while, and then after some weeks or months, they break camp and they move on. When these tools began to enter these camps, we began to see Fulanis inquiring about more. One of the, that particular team that we're partnering with that does distribution among them, last week, they went into one of those Fulani camps. And the moment he entered a large hut that had about 10 people or so, Fulani people, male and female, one of the ladies instantly recognized the team leader, who's a friend of mine, and said, "This is the man who showed us the film about Jesus the other day. Why didn't you bring your TV today?" Now, several of those people have heard the gospel. Some have not openly declared. They have not, come out to say that they are followers of Jesus, but through secret discipleship, what we call closet Christians, many of them have become followers of Christ and are being discipled covertly on the ground. We're just waiting for a point when the Lord will connect the dots and we will see a great harvest of what he has been doing among the Fulani.
Yeah, that's beautiful. There's so many challenges in Nigeria, Mark. I think of the diversity of all the languages that you're dealing with, the different cultures when you go from one people group to another, Islam, Christianity colliding together in the central part there. But on top of all of that, there is a real issue with corruption in the leadership and some of the dynamics of what people group leaders happen to be and how they sympathize then with particularly I'm thinking of the Fulani. They're incredibly influential business people and politicians. And so when the Fulani cause trouble, and we've heard of the Fulani herdsmen raiding and terrorizing different communities, sometimes the government's response is not as firm as what the common Nigerian would like to see. In other words, there seems to be a lack of holding the people who cause trouble accountable. Just help us understand that dynamic a little bit.
We are praying for Nigeria because it's a very dicey situation, and it's been something that has been on for decades. But yes, corruption is one of the major issues crippling the country. Let me mention that corruption itself is not the main problem. It's lawlessness. You see, corruption, I believe there is corruption everywhere. Anywhere the heart of man is not, regenerated, there is corruption. But the problem we have in Nigeria is that our laws are weak. So there's lawlessness. People do what they want, what they feel like doing, and know that they will get away with it because the laws have not been strengthened. The institutions that should enforce the law themselves have been polarized and infiltrated. So to a large extent, lawlessness is the mother of corruption.
Yeah. I love talking to you, Mark. I love your encouragement and enthusiasm because in the West, we can be inundated with just the news and you hear the negativity. You hear Boko Haram and attacks and kidnappings and all these things, and it can be very discouraging. But what I'm hearing you say is that, yeah, we're not happy with that. It's disappointing. It's in our country. But at the same time, there's a tremendous harvest and opportunity right now for the gospel to go into these places, and the gospel is going into these places. So we thank you for that attitude, and just speak to that a little bit, Mark, how you and other leaders are seeing this as really a historic opportunity in Nigeria.
Yes, I think we're living in some of the greatest times in history, even in Nigeria. I believe that there is a change taking place. It may not be very visible now because, a lot of things happen on the ground before it becomes manifest. Let me just share one quick story that really excites me. One of our friends who distributes the treasure among Fulani people in Nigeria, he's been seeing tremendous harvest in the rural areas, deep in the villages and among the nomadic Fulanis, where he himself is a Fulani believer who came to faith in Christ several years ago, has been equipped, and he uses the disciple-making movement processes, DMM, to reach out to these Fulanis out in the bushes. Recently, or sometime last year, he began to reach out to Fulanis just across the northern border of Nigeria, which is in a country called Niger Republic. Fulanis are there I've been to Niger many times, and I can tell you safely that the Fulanis are one of the major people groups there. But he has seen such tremendous, open doors in Niger Republic among the Fulanis. In one village where he went to by middle of last year, a chief, one of the chiefs, like a traditional ruler of that particular area, actually got up and announced that everybody in his village are free to choose whether they want to follow this message. And he basically goes in there with treasures, and he, finds the persons of peace and begins to disciple them, who now gather a crowd or gather their own immediate community. And the gospel is just beginning to seep in among the Fulanis of Niger Republic, who seem to be more open, less hostile than the Fulanis in Nigeria. So yes, we're excited. In the midst of the darkness, we see light brimming forth in sometimes unexpected places. Yeah,
amen. And the Lord uses people, Mark, and he's using you and your team in that amazingly strategic country of Nigeria. So, brother, thank you for being with us on the Every Nation Update. I know you have many more people that are praying for the work that God's doing there now.
Yes, it's a pleasure being here. Thanks for the opportunity. So glad to be sharing these things with the world.
He's an impressive guy.
Yes.
And he's like the kind of person that I think I want to be like. That kind of joy, that kind of confidence. Yeah. What a rock star in the kingdom is Mark.
He's amazing. Yeah, he is amazing.
And so he was talking about the treasure. This is a treasure right here. And, if you haven't seen these before, they're just practical little devices that play the gospel in the language, the heart language of the people. And apparently these are very effective. And from our side of things, that's fantastic. I mean, the more treasures we can distribute, the more the Word of God goes forth. But we were talking the other day, what if these were to fall into the hands of people that weren't so excited to see the gospel coming into their village? What would that be like? And you found somebody where that happened.
Yeah, we absolutely did. When we first started sending, and as I said, we've sent more treasures into Nigeria than any other country in Africa, John. And when we started out sending the Hausa, we just sent the New Testament on Hausa. And it wasn't long after that our partners told us, make sure you include the entire Bible, the Old Testament as well. And the reason is, for a Muslim, you want to find common ground. And so within the Old Testament, there's a lot of common ground, common characters: Abraham, Moses, Joshua in the Old Testament. And so you get the nodding of the head. But at some point, they recognize this is not the Quran, this is the Word of God. Now it becomes a threat. And that's exactly what happens. Since we've got hundreds and even thousands of treasures distributed throughout all northern Nigeria, sometimes they fall into the hands of hostile forces, so to speak. And there's a mixed reaction. One is that they view it as a threat, and they're not happy. And so that's what we found recently as it fell into the hands of an unfriendly. This is a Muslim leader who got his hands on a treasure recently.
This device is actually a device that we got from one of these Fulani people in the bush. They told us that some people came to them that there is no need for them to pray, to perform ablution and do prayers, but they should continue to be listening to what this device is saying. It's a special device that they translated Bible to Fulfulde, which is Fulani, for them to just be listening. And as we speak, most of these people in those villages now, they've stopped praying. All they do is to listen to this device. And the way they did in this device is, like, you can see that it has a solar power, like a filament for solar power, which can be recharged when they just put it in the sun. And you can see what is written there: full day Nigerian custom combo, which means it's specifically meant for Fulani people. So please, I think we need to wake up as Muslims. If they can do this, and if they can go to this length to do this, then you should know that they really are prepared. So there is need for us as Muslims to intensify our da'wah.
What do you think when you see that, Greg? I mean, on one hand, you know that the Fulani are listening, and on the other hand, what's your reaction?
On one hand, it's eerie, because that's a Muslim guy who is not a friendly. And one of the stories I'll never forget, John, is when our guys were doing a distribution. I was there. I saw this with my own eyes. And they were encountering a couple Muslim men underneath the tree, and they were sharing the treasure, the audio Bible, to them. And these guys were listening. They were enjoying it. And then it just dawned on them. They realized this isn't the Quran. This is the Bible. And they quickly handed the treasure back to our partner, and they said, if this thing causes trouble, they'll kill me. And so I know that when that guy's playing with that and he's showing around, it's a sort of a call, a warning call. But I also know the Word of God will not return void. Even into the hardest heart, which the radical Muslims in northern Nigeria are representative of, even that hardened heart, the Word of God can penetrate. So I'm excited. It's exhilarating to me, but I know there's a lot of work that we still need to do.
Well, we're going to meet a frontline worker who's in the north, who doesn't candy coat the situation in any way, and also doesn't shy away from it.
No.
So when I think of some of the great, I think of, even in the Bible, Daniel walking into the lion's den. Well, you're going to meet a modern day Daniel now, a man by the name of Gabriel. So let's go meet him.
Okay, well, we are joined by a very longtime friend, one of the longest tenured relationships that World Mission has had with national partners, my friend Gabriel, who is in Nigeria. So Gabriel, it's great that you are joining us on the Every Nation Update.
Thank you.
Well, buddy, you are not only are you in Nigeria, but you're actually in northern Nigeria. Try to describe what life would be like for a follower of Jesus to actually live in northern Nigeria.
Well, northern Nigeria is almost 75% of the geographical land of Nigeria, actually. Where you go to places, the cities like Kano State, like Borno State, like Jigawa State, like Sokoto State, like Katsina State, like Zamfara State. Now you are in the midst of almost 100% Muslims. And in that case, you are not too welcome as a Christian in many ways, except through, even if you want to be a missionary there in whatever name you call yourself, it must likely be through, holistic gospel, where you do a lot of humanitarian services. Then you could be accepted. So you have to develop relationship, and then as you talk to friends, it works. For instance, when we go to community as missionaries, you don't go as a missionary. You go as a humanitarian worker, and there might be you want to do a borehole for a community. You want to provide services of different kinds when you know their needs, and you want to provide those needs, and then you are accepted. Then through that, you begin to talk to friends, and then you begin to share the gospel with them one by one, having known them, and that works.
Now, you and I had a very interesting encounter. The village chief I learned, is very key. Everything sort of passes through that person. They have a tremendous influence over the community. And your team had tried to do some ministry there, and it was limited in its effectiveness. But then we met the man, and we talked about doing a water project. And to your point, after the water project was done, it really changed everything. Talk about that specific experience.
We went there, we wanted to teach them, and they said, no, you can't teach us, we are Muslims. And they were so resistant to the gospel. And then when we provided the well, we promised that we were going to give them water because they had no water. We became friends. And the chief said, we'll give you all the young people. The young people belong to you. If you do that, and we provided the water for them. And then even at the end of the day, the bigger chief summoned that other smaller chief and said, why do you give them a place? Why do you allow the Christians? And the chief and the small chief said, because they gave me water, you have not given me water since my life, and they gave me water. And so I need to accept them. And I can't send them away anymore. You see, to reach a Fulani man, you need to have a Fulani man to reach a Fulani man. When you have a Fulani man reaching a Fulani man, the possibility is 100% conversion.
Wow. You know, I love the model that you deployed there with all these national leaders in the northern part for that very reason. And there's a story, Gabrielle. He's a Fulani guy. You and I both know he came to Christ because he was witnessed to by that Christian farmer. And when he went back to his village, there was tremendous persecution that he had to deal with surrounding his whole family. So if you could tell us a little bit about this story, because there's an example of a Fulani man who came to Christ, and then he faced tremendous repercussions because of that decision.
Because as a Muslim, when you become converted, then you lose all your assets. So the Pakol is come, and they took away his wife. And then they took away his children. So he was left alone. And then they went and locked him in prison. So Anna was in prison for 2 years. And they said because he stole cows. They didn't say he was converted to Christianity. They say he stole their cows. So they put him in prison for 2 years. Now, this is how they were well converted. When they put him in prison for 2 years, and then they killed the two of the children. They killed them, literally killed them. And so the woman became so mad and so sad, and she looked for the whereabouts of the husband, and went and found her husband in prison. And God converted also there. And then the Christian leaders in the local government began to talk and persuading the authority who are not actually Muslim. And then they released him. That was how Ardo came out of prison with his wife. And then he became a very serious Christian. At least it was in another state. Then somebody saw him and he was telling them he want to preach to Muslims, he want to preach to Fulani. So they called me. They called me from that state. They sent a message to me that, look, the only person that you can work with and succeed in what you are saying is Gabriel. So they look for me. And so I said, well, I need to know him first. And so he need to come to Yola because it's very far away from Jalingo. So I said, you need to come to Yola. And so they brought him to me. The pastor who introduced him to me brought him to me in Yola to know his doctrine. And this guy was perfect. And then we stayed for some time. And then we sent him to go and have a training as in Hausa training. And then he came back. And that is the beginning of his mission work up to tomorrow. And I'm talking to you today. Whether you're a Muslim Fulani around Ardo or they are Christian, they don't care. They believe he's their leader. He's one of, if we have challenges, we want to reach Fulani and you want you want to have impact, then you put Ardo in the forefront. Once you put a Fulani man in the forefront of evangelism, I tell you, it doesn't matter whether they are Muslim or not, they will listen to him. But these are nomadic. The nomadic Fulani are different from the city Fulani. The city Fulani are so civilized, they are the ones that are governors. I mean, like for instance, in some of these states, they are the ones that are the rulers. They are the ones that own the school. They are the ones that are everything. And they are the ones that are inciting the nomadic Fulani not to be Christians. So if you are trying to reach the nomadic Fulani, you have to be very careful. Don't introduce them to the city one. Because the city one are smart and they are educated and they are so Islamic inclined. And so they always try to convince this nomadic not to be Christian. So we are very careful when you are reaching them, you make sure that you isolate them from the city ones.
We hear so much about Boko Haram in northern Nigeria, and I know it's been devastating for so many of the communities that they've gone in, targeting not just Christians, but nominal Muslims, and the chaos that's caused and led to the displacement of thousands and thousands of families. So you have these villages that have scattered and now are basically ghost towns, or Boko Haram has taken them over. But the people, Gabrielle, have been consolidated across dozens of these IDP or internally displaced people's camps, and we visited some. Talk about that situation and maybe your perspective on the opportunities inside of these camps.
Well, maybe that is the only advantage of Boko Haram spiritually, where the people, you cannot reach them in their community because of Islam, have been terrorized and have been sent out of their community, and now they are helpless in their camps. The advantage for us is not because people are displaced, because these people are in pain, but the advantage to the gospel is now we have access to them. When we get to the camp, we get to materials, we buy a lot of things for them, and then food stuff, we buy clothing, we go with so many material, medical material, treasures, and so many things. And then they listen to us because they are helpless. I remember a situation, I went to a camp, and I went with Bibles. I went with 500 Bibles and more than 200 treasures to distribute to these communities. I mean, to the camp. But the soldier, and I went with food stuff. We gave food. Before we started distributing, the soldiers told us, they said, look, you are Christians. These camp are Muslims. 90% are Muslims. And we don't want you to give Bibles here. We said, fine, don't worry. We will keep our Bibles. So we keep our treasure, we keep our Bibles at that time, and then we distributed bag of rice, we distributed food stuff, we distributed sanitary wares. And then when we were about to leave, one young man came to me and said, excuse me, don't you have a Christian Bible? And I asked, are you a Christian? And I said, no, I'm a Muslim. And I said, wait, I couldn't wait for the soldiers anymore. I couldn't wait for the soldiers anymore. I ran into the vehicle, and then I packed these Bibles, and then I brought these treasures and the Bibles all together, and then I gave one to this guy, Greg. There was a stampede. If the soldiers have not stopped me, everybody said, we want the Christian Bible. We want the Christian Bible. We want the treasure. We want this. And we gave them out. And the soldiers were helping us to make sure they land the people. At a point, we couldn't distribute anymore because there would be stampede. You don't see many of Muslims get converted at the time, even when they believe that Christianity is the answer. Now you can't see many of them. They're afraid. So, but you have few of them that are converted, we help them. And that was why we started what we call Convert Care Center. Our Convert Care Center is to deal with those who get converted. We pick them away from those areas and take them to the place because they are afraid to stay among the people once they are converted. Anything can happen to them, even in the camp.
I understand. When you guys distribute the treasures, the solar-powered audio Bibles in Hausa and Fulani, when you're presenting it to whether it's a village chief or leaders in the community, what kind of reactions are you seeing from these almost 100%, as you said, many of the places are 100% Muslim. What kind of reactions do you see as people turn it on and start listening to their own language?
You know, when we visited the chief, who is a Muslim Fulani man, and we visited him and he accepted us, and then we played the treasure for him, and then we told him this is the word of God, and that we are Christian. And then he brought his wives. And then the 4 women sat down there, and then he said we should play for them. And we played for them, and then we gave them copies. Each of them had one. And then the people that were around were excited, and the king, and we gave them, and there was no problem. Now, that opened the door for us, but not every chief does that. But in some places, like in that village, the chief was excited that it's okay. Nobody was afraid to accept, and as a result, so many people became Christians. And we are trying to raise the young Fulani guys so that they will reach their own people.
Gabriel, you've mentioned so many things to us. You've helped us to understand with much greater clarity of what is going on in northern Nigeria specifically and why it's such a strategic field. There's going to be hundreds and hundreds of people praying for you now. You mentioned the Convert Care Center. You've talked about the treasure and I'm sure the need for more Bibles, the water projects, the displaced people. There's so many needs. But I want to ask you, if you were meeting someone and it's their first time hearing about northern Nigeria and you just wanted them to pray for one thing, what just burns on your heart as you think about Nigeria, and what would you want the body of Christ to be praying for as it relates to that precious harvest field?
Yeah, right now in northern Nigeria, there is so many crises. We have the Boko Haram in the northeast. It has escalated almost to the whole of the northeast, and many people have been displaced. We have what we call the bandits. These are Fulani that came from different countries, and they just plus Nigerian Fulanis, and then they became what they call bandits, and then they kidnap communities, they kill, they destroy communities, and they kidnap people, carry them into the forest. This is so severe. It's so severe, Greg, that virtually every day more than 100 people are killed by bandits. If there is anything we need at this time to pray for northern Nigeria, is peace. Tomorrow I'm going to Koma and some villages, but I needed to go with police escorts. Not one policeman going with me. Do you know that? The reason is you could be kidnapped by bandits on the road anywhere for ransom.
Wow.
So, but then we preach the gospel. I'm going to see some Fulani chief. Even though they're afraid of them, but I have treasure here for them. I'm going to Kerala. You know the place. You know the village. I'm going there tomorrow, and I'm going to see them. I'm going to present gifts of of treasure for them. I'm going to give them some other material. As a matter of fact, I'm going to give them 2 bags of rice.
Beautiful.
And then next week we're going to do one well for one of the community. But people are still afraid, but we are still working in the midst of fear. And so we need prayer. I think that if there is any prayer, this is the time, that is the place that we need prayer now, in this northern part of this country. Otherwise, if it continues like this for the next 2 years, there will be no missionary in the north.
Yeah. Well, we know that's not going to be the case, brother, because courageous people like you are an inspiration to us, Gabriel, and you are that laborer that the Lord asked us to pray for. He said, pray to the Lord of the harvest to send forth laborers. And that's you, Gabriel. I promise you that hundreds of people are going to be praying for you now. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for giving us, just pulling back the veil and helping us understand better the dynamics of northern Nigeria, a critical mission field, not only in Africa, friends, but for the whole world. And it's assuring to know that God got you there, brother. We're praying for you. Thanks for being with us on the Every Nation Update.
It's a really powerful appeal that our brother Gabriel just made to us. He said, you can be kidnapped at any time for any reason, and tomorrow I'm going into the village. Mm-hmm. And he asked us to pray. And if you're online right now or wherever you are, we're just going to do that. Greg, would you lead us in this prayer?
Yeah,
let's offer this prayer for peace.
Let's pray. Lord, we come together as one family. We are in many different locations, Lord, but our hearts are locked together as one, and we come in alignment with Gabriel's request. We pray for peace. Father, touch the dear ones of northern Nigeria, the Kanuri, the Fulani, the Hausa that are without a gospel witness. Lord, we celebrate the testimonies, but we know that the enemy is fighting, that he's not happy with us going into his territory, yet we will advance because that's what you've called us to do. You used your last words and you said, go to the ends of the earth. Father, I can't think of another place more representative of the ends of the earth than northern Nigeria. And that's what our commitment is. That's what our passion. We're determined to come alongside our friends like Mark and Gabrielle and do just that. Take the gospel into the ends of the earth. Thank you for this opportunity tonight that we've had to showcase a harvest field that you laid your life down for. You paid the ultimate price for Nigeria, all of Nigeria, Lord. And may we be obedient as we're reflecting and asking you to find our expression of engagement. We give you thanks and praise in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. God responds to the prayers of his people, and I hope that you continue in fervent prayer for peace in that region, and that God acts. And then we can act too. And I want to tell you a story. We were in our board meeting, the World Mission board meeting, which meets a couple times a year, just last week, Thursday, Greg. Yeah. And you told a story because this is current events. We're alive right now. And just within weeks, a couple weeks ago or less, once again, the bandits or the Fulani or the Boko Haram, they took over 300 girls who were in a boarding school and they kidnapped them. Yeah. And just like exactly what Gabriel was saying, dragged them off into the forest. And this kind of horrible thing is happening right now. And while we're also praying for the return of those girls and their safety, there's another school 10 miles down the road that Gabriel told us about. What was that situation?
Right. Well, this displaced issue is just so massive, John. In Nigeria alone, there's over 2 million people that are displaced. Every 3 seconds, someone is newly displaced in the world because of war, violence, or persecution. And Nigeria is an epic ground zero of that. And so the manifestation of that looks a lot of different ways. But one of the things is these bandits and Boko Haram, they will go in and they look for soft targets in these schools. If they're going to take 300 people out, they can't risk the police kind of responding, so they have to do it fairly quickly. So they go to places that are soft targets. And there's a school that John had mentioned that was just down the road from a place that they just recently attacked within the last 30 days. And the children there are terrified because they don't have a fence. And I shared that with our board, and they said, we're going to do something about that. And so before that meeting was over, I'm so proud of our team, John, because in that room, we made the decision to resource. It was about $10,000, and amongst ourselves, that need was met. But it's just things like that, John. I think that's how God wants all of us to respond when the Holy Spirit touches your heart to engage in a place like this. It's those kind of simple things that we can do that can be all about preserving the harvest that Jesus has already secured.
Well, I think about Mark's words, the church can be the ostrich and can sometimes bury their heads in the sand. I don't want to hear what's going on. I don't want to know. Please don't be the ostrich. In fact, you tuned in tonight to hear these stories. We have a great connection through Greg, through World Mission, through the staff all over the world to find out what's really going on. And it was really exciting to me personally to know that you said, oh, there's this school, there's no fence, and we will do something about it. We had a little coffee break, and one of the board members said, I've just talked to my wife. We're going to let everyone contribute anything. If the Lord leads them to contribute, we'll make up the rest. We're not leaving this meeting until that fence is paid for. That is faith in action, and that's what World Mission's about. And if you're watching tonight, I hope you're participating through prayer and through giving and through any other way that you can participate so that we're not the ostrich,
Yes,
Greg. We don't
that's
put our
right.
head in the sand.
That's right.
We want to be a part of the kingdom of God while we still have breath. And World Mission is doing that in Nigeria.
Amen. You know, and we've tried to equip our friends tonight here on the Every Nation Update, John, with just that nations. And you've learned some phrases. The Kanuri, the Fulani, the Hausa are all nations within northern Nigeria that are over 99% Muslim. When you be praying, that's where it starts, John. It starts praying to the Lord of the harvest to send forth the laborers among the Kanuri, among the Fulani, among the Hausa, and the many other majority Muslim people groups. But there's obviously practical ways that you can participate too. If God leads you to connect with us, there'll be more information. But we just appreciate you taking time out tonight to tune in and learn, educate yourself, equip yourself so that you're more of a threat to the enemy. That's our objective.
Well, make it a habit. I mean, this is where you're going to find information that you're not going to find on the 6 o'clock or the 7 o'clock news. We're starting to develop curriculum so that you can take the Every Nation Update and dive a little bit deeper into it, research some of these stories deeper. I hope you take advantage of that. And I think we'll be back the next quarter, and I think we're moving a little ways north and going to the Middle East. Is that
We're
right?
going into the Middle East. I think we might have, we'll give a little sneak preview, maybe some pyramids involved, you know, an area right near Israel.
We're going to Disneyland.
North Africa and the Middle East.
Oh, North Africa.
Where there's exciting things going on.
Fantastic. Well, again, God bless you. It's great to be a part of a movement that's of the Lord. And if you join us with World Mission's endeavors in places like Nigeria, you're going to be part of that. And you're going to enjoy it because God will be using you. Thanks for joining us. Episode 3, Wrapped.